Hey everyone, Reed here with Big Strong Book, author of Chorus of 1,000. It's a great Sunday. I hope all of your Sundays are going as well as mine is after the Vikes crushed the Texans. Anyway, here to talk about Exodus from the Long Sun, the fourth and final installment in Gene Wolfe's Book of the Long Sun. Now, if all of you have been tuning in to the three previous videos that covered the first three volumes in the tetralogy, you will know that I am of an optimistic but kind of mixed view on this series, mainly because it is great in terms of its character development, the vibrancy of the characters, which even to the end, even to the conclusion of Exodus from the Long Sun, that is undeniably the Wolfe's strength with this series. But then, in terms of the story, the plot, the world building is still really good, although it's kind of a little disappointing, I guess, in some respects in this. It's still good. Obviously, the plot is going to be where things start to fall apart. It's going to be where it really wears on your patience, as it did with me, especially getting into this, again, going from Volume 1, Nightside the Long Sun, to Lake of the Long Sun, into Call Day of the Long Sun. I admitted, I'm like, it has a very slow pace. It can be difficult to get through. I understood that I could recognize the weakness inherent within that, but I had trust that Wolfe would deliver, that everything that all the breadcrumbs that he lays within the earlier parts of a volume, they will have their payoff in the end. But when it comes to Exodus of the Long Sun, boy, for the first, I would say, 3/4, the first 75%. This is, at least in this omnibus edition, this final volume alone, Exodus of the Long Sun, or Exodus from the Long Sun, is about 400 pages. So for the first 300 of those, boy, this was a 2 out of 5 read for me. It was about a 2 out of 5 and then the final fourth eked it up to, I would say, a solid 3 out of 5. And again, that is conditional upon rereads. Rereading this multiple times, it could ultimately become a 5 out of 5. Who knows? Not for a while, though. Certainly not until I read Book of the Short Sun, but we'll get into that here in a little bit. So, if you have stuck it out up until this point, obviously you're going to want to read this, especially because the ending of Exodus from the Long Sun recontextualizes the whole thing. It was something that I think I had spoiled beforehand, but it didn't ruin the experience. Because things are divulged in that obviously I did not have spoiled. I just knew the nature of the ending, the perspective that it is told from. I had that spoiled. But again, coming into this, it's no different from the other books. It's going to be very slow paced, even more so. We have all the stuff that Silk is dealing with, moving at a snail's pace with his role as Calde, as he's trying to essentially stop a major conflict from brewing. A conflict that may happen, it may not happen, between the Vironese, and then I'm going to butcher it, so I am going to the glossary to find how the term is pronounced. But it might not even be in here. Here it is. The Trivigante, or the Trivigante, the other city-state that is having a big processional, a big parade, and they're starting to court the Vironese. But people are wondering, well, they have thousands of people, thousands of their troops within our city. They have the upper hand right now if they wanted to just attack. So that's a big part of Silk's story in particular within this, is just trying to navigate the city-state relations, and then also the relations with the Ayuntamiento, because obviously that is the council whose power he has somewhat usurped by this point, trying to negotiate a peace with them, while at the same time trying to ensure that a conflict does not start to break out. But then there is the imperatives that he is feeling from the outsider as he is in communion with this deity figure, perceived deity. But then he is also, he is falling in love with Hyacinth even more within this book. That ultimately leads to an interesting point that I guess, as Wolfe has always said that he wants to have happen in his writing, I did not see it coming, but it was inevitable. There are a lot of things within Silk's character within this that I can see, but then a lot of things that just really confuse the hell out of me that Silk does towards the end. But the other side of it, beyond Silk trying to negotiate peace as Calde, you also have Maytera Mint, who has been captured and then is trying to find her way back, literally to the surface, and back into control of her forces to ensure that she can do her part to kind of save the city, to save Viron if it were to come to that. And then you have Auk, who has an imperative from Thartos, a deity who appears to be speaking through him, or if he is being spoken to by Paz, kind of the great god, the great overseer. Yes, Tartaros. Eknida's older son, Tartaros, is the god of darkness. So Auk is being led, and then we have the introduction of the mainframe, or flyers coming out from the mainframe. Specifically, the character, again, if I can find the name, it's like Skinida. No, it's not Skinida. I was confusing that with Eknida, the deity. Scython, who is a flyer from Mainframe, captured by the Trivigauntes, and he says, "I'm here for Auk. I'm here to take this group of people to Mainframe for the unveiling of Paz's plan." Now, what is Paz's plan? Well, we've heard thus far in the series, for most of it, that Paz is dead. That there is almost a crisis within the monitors, within the glass, or within these digital god figures. But now with it being called Mainframe, it kind of confirms it being these deities are, computer programs that a computer program presents itself to the people as, with religion being a more digestible way of getting across information. It's more, at least it's easier for them, and they create these armies to keep each other at bay, as Silk kind of surmises towards the end of this, that all of these city-states that have these armies that are capable of immense destruction, with a lot of sleeper armies kind of below in these tunnels, they're all there. They're there to keep each other, to keep themselves fighting with each other, so they don't ultimately undermine the power of Paz or the power of Mainframe, or this computer program that's kind of controlling the world. And so those are the main plot threads. Now, again, it moves forward at a snail's pace. I like Wolfe. I love Wolfe. I really do. He's probably, of all the authors that I've really discovered this year, he's probably my favorite. Again, I love the Book of the New Sun, Earth of the New Sun. Really liked The Wizard Knight. And while I love the characters within this, I think that is the biggest strength that you can take away from Book of the New Sun. Silk might be his best protagonist, but when your biggest thing is characters, but that's really the only thing that this has going for it, that's tough. It might be the ideas inherent within, because but the scope of this series ultimately comes across within the last 10 pages. And even then it's a head scratcher, because it's like, okay, well, now I have to read Book of the Short Sun to then get any sense of conclusion from this. So it is frustrating. I will admit it is very frustrating. And so the pacing of this, the plotting or lack thereof, it really started to wear on me. This was very difficult to read. I had to just kind of push through it. Again, if for nothing, for the strength of just who the characters were. Silk, Auk, Maytera Mint is great, Hammerstone, Horn, Nettle, Oreb, all those characters, they're so good. So I just did it for the sake of the characters, powering through, getting to the end. One thing that had come up, which I had feared I would reach a similar conclusion, and I think I did, with Book of the Long Sun, is that this might have been a 1,300-page prologue to the Book of the Short Sun. And I think it was, because of the way that the end recontextualizes itself. So I guess we're just going to go blatantly into spoilers now. Silk tries to negotiate peace, and Real N feels it very inspired within him to kind of go to the mainframe, to go to see Auk. But he also realizes too, he has to kind of be it is not his, well, it's not his cross to bear. It's probably the best phrase I can use to describe that. So Auk goes off into mainframe, but it kind of cuts. It all of a sudden cuts to Auk already leaving mainframe with, I think he's with Chanel, maybe a couple other characters, but they're going off. Are they going off to blue? I think they're going off to green, to the Short Sun, to the other world, the Short Sun, with embryos and everything. So that it seems to me, and we're getting the information as the flyer that is captured from mainframe as he tells them, because he's more in the know of what Paz's plan is. Now, is it to send people off to colonize other planets because it realizes, well, maybe that was always the plan, right? Maybe that was always the plan of this program, was because the world, the Long Sun world, was not meant to be it wasn't meant as an indefinite. It was meant as a means to an end, the end being to ultimately colonize other planets, other star systems. And the light of the sun, the light of the Long Sun, is waning, and it becomes winter towards the end of this. And that's, I think, though, the flyer says at one point, that's not just a natural change of seasons, that is the program being like, oh crap, we're losing power, but we better just kind of really bring it down and then make it winter. So you have that, but it was a very weird cut within that last chapter that made me feel like I missed something, and I was going back, I'm like, no, I don't think I missed anything. The interesting things about Mucor, that's been one of the more intriguing, puzzling bits of being able to inhabit or kind of possess different characters. Maybe because it seems like they are all, because they all come from embryos, or they have that kind of embryonic strain within them, that they must have chips or something within their head that can allow a program to take over. Because that, again, the interesting straddling point with this series is faith versus, science versus faith. What characters are, or whether it be Silk or Remora, Quetzal, any of the Pateras or the Mayteras. Less so the Mayteras, because they are chems and they kind of understand that the artificial nature of their bodies. But what they might perceive as a sign from a deity is actually science. That might be a greater commentary that Wolfe is having for our lives. What we might perceive as divine influence might It could be a coincidence, or it could be just it could be technology. It's more so, I mean, you can't exactly apply that one for one into the lives of us on Earth because, at least as far as we know, right, we're not in essentially I mean, the world is a physical environment. It is not simulated, but it is under the patronage of this, at the whim of the program of mainframe. So the characters can confuse that, and at the end of the day, I mean, it is kind of faith, because they can pray, they can utilize the monitors in a very religious way, and it works for them. So does that mean that their faith is ultimately affirmed? It might be. It might mean that their faith is affirmed, that their faith is real, that these deities, even though they are programs, they do exist. So therefore, one could argue the deities are in a way real. But what's interesting is that Silk gets an opportunity to take power at the end, but he doesn't. Or maybe the mainframe was trying to trick him. It says, "Don't you want to be like Paz? Don't you want to be Paz?" The whole two-headed thing, and he doesn't. He just leaves. He leaves mainframe and is kind of heading back. And it seems like he has convinced the commanders on that flight, who have been meaning to take him as a prisoner to their own city-state. He's kind of been taking it back to Viron as war has erupted, and maybe it's as a sign of vengeance against Silk. Maybe they wanted Silk. Maybe there are, interestingly enough, this was pre the Matrix, but there are a lot of similarities. Kind of like how in Matrix Revolution. Now I'm getting into the Matrix. How in Matrix Revolutions, how Neo, goes to the machine city, or goes to essentially the mainframe of the Matrix, to try to offer himself up and plug himself directly in. I guess spoilers, sorry for the third Matrix movie. But Silk is kind of in a similar position. I'm like, okay, he's gonna give himself over, his body, his mind, his spirit, to the mainframe, but he doesn't. He leaves, or at least if he did, it's not divulging that. Certainly Horn would know that, because Horn has been writing this whole thing. And then there are the very vulnerable side of Silk that we see in that last phase of the book, where he's almost, or at least Horn thinks he's going to jump off of the lander, jump off the flyer, or whatever. And then he has this great conversation with Horn about just what he has seen about the nature of evil and the nature of the people, and giving into that would be giving into an evil impulse, and he can't kill himself. Even though if he were to die, it would certainly immortalize him. But then, the big question at the end of this, obviously, is where is Silk? Did he die? Is he in the Long Sun? Horn, so it's revealed at the end. We have a section called My Defense, where it is revealed that this entire thing, the entire Book of the Long Sun, has been written by Horn, one of the children of the teenagers, or the not even an acolyte, or the students that live within this Mantion, that the Mayteras have been teaching, and that Silk's the paternal, or the scholarship, or the leadership inherent within him has rubbed off for these students. And certainly Horn and Nettle, who it is eventually revealed becomes his wife, that makes a lasting impression for them, because then at the end, Silk passes the leadership torch to Horn and says, "Horn, you've got to get our people out of here. This conflict is getting out of control. We've just got to leave. We've got to leave the Long Sun. We have to leave the Whirl and go to the Short Sun." And so it is then up to Horn, and then kind of Quetzal, but then Quetzal later, he becomes mortally wounded. and they make their way to blue, one of the plant. They can choose between blue or green, and they choose blue, which may or may not. There's a debate at the end of that was or was not in accordance with Quetzal's wishes. And Horn is writing this. He's writing it as a almost like a defense of the character of Silk. He apologizes for the way that he portrays certain figures, Hyacinth, Auk. He admits to portraying them in a negative light, which you do get that. So then you wonder, okay, how much of this was true? If it is from Horn, he admits to writing and editing it with Nettle. So if it is their piece, if it is their piece of writing, if it is their biography, how much can we rely on their scholarship? So how much of it was actually accurate in the end? But Horn, he has faith. He has the faith that I guess was impressed upon him by Silk the last time that he ever saw Silk, which was Silk was like, okay, I'll meet you with the Landers, but then he never sees Silk again. So where is Silk? I don't know. I assume that that's what's going to be the big focus with Book of the Short Sun, is going to be Horn's quest for trying to reconnect with his old master, and will he ever? I don't know. We shall see. This makes me, it certainly makes me intrigued to jump into Book of the Short Sun. I am not going to yet. I'm going to put some time within that. I'm going to try to get through Narnia. I think I'm also going to try to read His Dark Materials before I get to Book of the Short Sun. So I'm going to take some time off from reading Wolfe and reading the Solar Cycle. So in the end, I think Book of the Long Sun, it's tough to judge. It's tough to judge without reading Book of the Short Sun. And so maybe that then bounces right back to Book of the Long Sun as kind of a damning mark against it. Because my ultimate view of this series will be contingent upon the follow-up. However, not having the follow-up, this is a somewhat complete story. It is the tale of Silk. It is the tale of a man who is really just out to save his people, and to do so in a peaceable manner. And he accepts the leadership roles that are thrust upon him because he views it as a means to help people, as a means to kind of preserve the peace of society that he knows can be found. And he doesn't. It's almost like Paz offers him a deity or a venerated role, but he chooses not to, and he just goes into this kind of mysterious existence, this ambiguous existence, which Horn, from his perspective, is longing after. He's wanting to get back to it. He says, I want to find Silk, and he has faith that Silk is somewhere in the Short Sun, not the Long Sun. Even though the Long Sun whirl at the way end, Horn can still kind of see it in space, or from blue. So it's the story of a man who galvanizes a people, but does so because he wants to save them, and he does save them. Silk saves them with kind of a final deference to power. He doesn't become God, or maybe that was Mainframe just trying to trick Silk all along. We don't know. There was that crucial point that Horn does not include. I don't know why. I don't know if that's somewhere. I forget if that's somewhere in the defense, but Horn just doesn't say anything. So I don't know. So within that, there is strength. And again, as I've said numerous times already, even in this video, the strength of Book of the Long Sun can be found in its great characters, the Dickensian quality within their development. It's great. But this tetralogy, as it did for me, will really try your patience. I'm certain my experience was like a lot of others. It's very difficult to get through. It's harder than Book of the New Sun, because the pace that this moves at you really just have to take your time. It's tough to I am quite confident that this will probably be at least marginally better on a reread. Just knowing where it goes, knowing I can take my time with it a little bit more, not just trying to figure out what happens next. So yeah, it's solid. Not nearly as good as Book of the New Sun, at least on a first read. I will obviously be continuing to Book of the Short Sun, but not for some time. I'm gonna, I really need more of a palate cleanser, or at least lighter book. So I'm gonna get through the remaining books of Narnia. As I said, probably his Dark Materials as well. That's going to be a good counterbalance for Narnia. And then we'll finally jump into Book of the Short Sun, which I've heard is, and that's the good thing. I've heard that once you get to that, it's great. Really kind of rounds out the story well. So I'm looking forward to getting to that eventually. Not right away though. So, Exodus from the Long Sun, the Book of the Long Sun as a whole. Let me know what you think of it. And as always, I will see you guys next time.